Okay, I'm Andrew Lisignoli with Trees of Corrales, and I get to introduce our next speaker. And you guys are all in for a treat. We host different workshops and such out at the farm every so often, and we do talk a lot about root systems and structural pruning. I don't know, it was 10 years ago or better. We had Brian come out and speak, and we still get positive comments on what he brings. I'm not going to read his bio in here, but he's kind of a protege of Ed Gilman, and he speaks here quite a bit. You guys are in for a treat. You're going to get a lot of real common sense, been in the dirt. This is what I found that works, and a real good, humble approach to what he's going to share. It's going to start off on structural pruning, and this afternoon he's going to get more into roots, if I got that right. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Brian Kempf. Hi, folks. Pleasure to be here. We're going to talk about my favorite subject of pruning, particular structural pruning. How many folks have heard the term structural pruning? Quite a few, but not everybody. Okay, so we're going to define it through this next hour. This slide here, and this is a book that we wrote with Ed Gilman and Jim Clark and Nelda Matheny. The tree next to it is a Quercus agrifolia that's been perfectly structurally pruned. Speak up. Is that better? Sorry, folks. I have to click the computer and see it. So anyway, these two trees, the Quercus virginiana here, have the same shape or form. Form and structure are two totally different things, right? Structure is the branch makeup. The form is the outside shape. Can you see that they're similar form but totally different structure? If you look at the tree on the right, do you see an issue? How many can see issue? What's the issue? Anybody brave enough to say what the issue is? Codominant stem with a bark inclusion at 4 feet, right? So that's a Quercus virginiana. That tree, that limb could probably go up to 60, 70 feet. Can you imagine how much load is on that branch at maturity? Opportunity for failure is high, correct? If you have to make clearance, and let's say you have to make bus clearance, 11, 12 feet, you're either going to lion's tail that tree or you're going to cut that branch off and end up with half a tree. So we try to avoid large aspect ratio branches in the lower trunk. Anybody heard the term aspect ratio? I'm going to use it a lot today. How many folks? Aspect ratio? It's a newer term. It's very simple. It's just the size of branch in relation to what it's attached to. Size of branch in relation to the trunk, right? Aspect ratio. Branches with small aspect ratio are stronger than those with big aspect ratio. That's a really important thing throughout the theme of all of this. Okay, so this is, sorry, I might do this. Does that work? Does that work? Okay, if I screw it up, just call it out again. This is a Quercus agrifolia. This is my daughter, Hannah. And this is a tree that I grew as a root experiment and then used it as a pruning experiment over time. And here's the root zone, container grown tree with good root architecture. But like all self-respecting Quercus agrifolia, which is a coastal live oak, native to California, it's trying to be codominant. It has a large aspect ratio branch right there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to slow that down so that doesn't become a problem down the road. So I prune this tree every year, and typically just a little bit. I'll do what's called directional pruning to direct and slow growth in some areas and encourage growth in other areas. And notice there that the branch aspect ratio, the size of the branch in relation to the trunk, is about 75%, meaning it's big. That would be considered a codon. Now, The important thing about aspect ratio is the size relationship, not the size. Does that make sense? Large aspect ratio on a small tree, large aspect ratio on a large tree. This is a small tree. So I reduced the branch with the large aspect ratio. I cut 50% of the wood out of that to a bud away from the central leader. What type of cut is that? Is that a problem? Is it? Is it? Is there any hardwood on this branch? So what you're saying is the heading cut's not the problem, the follow-up is the problem. Good comment. So anyway, I made a heading cut. Good, I'm not teasing, I'm showing the response because I follow up. Folks, pruning is not a one-time event. It's a process, not a one-time event. So anyway, I made a heading cut to a bud away from the central leader in the direction I wanted the tree to go. And that was in 2012. And you can see the tree behaved very well. And in 2013, grew out in the direction I wanted it. There you go. That's 2014. Can you guys see the difference in aspect ratio? The more wood you cut out of a part of a tree, the slower that part grows relative to the other parts. So, and you can see this is 2014. Do you see the change in aspect ratio? You've all heard the term subordination, correct? It's what we got going on here. And that's 2014. So generally, if you have the opportunity to start with a young nursery tree and apply just a little bit of dose in the right locations over a period of time, you can end up with a perfect structure. That's what I try to do. That's not always possible. Sometimes you have to take more wood off. Whoops. And I limbed it up. My wife said, I want to see the front door. The tree no longer needs its temporary branches. The trunk taper is plenty and the tree is plenty strong. So limb it up. What do you notice about the size of my cuts? Small, right? So structural pruning keeps the branch aspect ratio small, so you have choices down the road into where my first permanent scaffold is, right? So I just kept everything in check. Here, I would think with the sunlight and the heat that you would want temporary branches along the trunks of young trees so they don't burn. So sometimes well-meaning people do very bad things to trees. And this is a ginkgo. And can anybody, and I don't know if there's is there a pointer up here? There is. Let's see, I'm going to try, is this it? Okay. Okay, it's a whole new world. Okay, so do you see this, folks? The very well-meaning gardener, and this is down the street from my house, and I planted these trees, didn't understand why this leader thing poked out of the top. Why is that there? What's this thing? Branches grow up with the tree. They don't stay in the same place, right? So we need to fix it. It's not round. The crown needs to be round so that can magically form a larger crown, right? So I started working on this tree. I did its first corrective pruning dose. How much wood did I remove out of that tree? A lot. Good. That's good. That's a technical term. What do you think? Just to see how much. 60%? 75? Maybe of buds, not wood. Maybe 75% of the buds, but not the wood. Is this a problem? Maybe. We're going to see because I got a 10-year slide set of this one. So the question is maybe. He's not convinced in the front row yet, but okay. So who heard the 25% rule? Thou shalt never take more than 20. Who believes it? You're all scared. Raise your hand. Guess what? That was not based on science. That was a discussion made with Dick Harris and John Britton and early people involved in arboriculture sitting around discussing what was appropriate to avoid significant response to the pruning. Sometimes in arboriculture, things that have been around become science. that is not science. The amount that needs to be applied is based on the objective in a given situation. Okay, so anyway, I removed 75% of the buds, let's say 50% of the wood, and I am happy to do that. Ginkgos don't put branches on 1 year wood, so you can see here's where my new leader is. Put on the branches on 2nd year wood, and the leader grows. And of course, the tree responds, right? So it's not a one-time event. It is a process. So I pruned it again, and you can see I pruned it less the 2nd time. Tyson's is my scale model. Tyson's a landscape architect and a certified arborist that I work with. And you can see right by Tyson's feet is far less material. And you can see the tree continues to grow on. And you can see it continues to grow, and we keep pruning it less. And Tyson's getting more clean cut, and the tree's getting bigger. And there we go. So was I mean to that tree? How is the structure? So pruning provides zero health value. Structure and health are two different things. Your tree can be healthy as all get out and have horrific structure and vice versa. Structure and health are different. I'm making the decision that the structure of this tree is more important than the quote health or long-term health of pruning it hard. So I'm going to prune it hard and fix the structure so a truck doesn't hit the scaffold and break it down the road. So you can see we make a lot of reduction and double reduction cuts, sometimes heading cuts, sometimes. You can see this technically here, is a heading cut. But it's on a temporary branch. That branch is on 4 feet. I keep it there. I keep it in check. It feeds the tree. It provides shade. I'm going to keep it small. So when I make a removal cut, the removal cut is small in relation to the trunk. The branch stays the same size, does not grow in diameter. The trunk does. Here's the tree. There's the tops of the type of cuts I'm making. There you go. And there's Tyson, and he's less clean cut now, but I removed more wood because I let it go a couple years. You can see by the ladder there, we took some more wood out of it. Those are reduction and double reduction coat, trying to slow the growth down on larger aspect ratio branches. Some branches in that tree are not pruned at all. And so there you go, the positive. So a lot of people think that branches grow up with the tree. How many people think that? They do grow. They grow down because they put wood on the bottom, actually, more of the top, so they get closer to the ground, believe it or not. But your homeowners, the people you're marketing to, do not understand that. They have no clue how the structure works. They think the crown grows up and magically turns into this round thing. And when they understand, when people really understand how branches work and growth works, you can read the structure of a tree. Therefore, you can apply the dose of pruning that needs to take place. So I added this year, I gave myself, Mark Chisholm, and Ed Gilman gave 5 pruning workshops around the state of California this year. And I added this other tree that I had kept out for a long time. And there was 2 trees that the gardener got mad at. And this one, I pruned once and never pruned again. If you want to do an experiment, do it in your neighbor's yard. Don't do it in yours. So my neighbor has 2 different structures, and this was pruned. And you see the difference in the structure. So I'm not making it up, folks. There's a very significant structure. Where's the load concentrated? On the tree on your left. You got all the load concentrated in one spot here, right? Now it's not a Bradford pear, it's a ginkgo, but it applies across the board. So you can see very, very different. So there's Tyson back to his more homeless era. This is the tree I pruned once. And you can see I pruned it just as hard as the other one. I didn't do any follow-up prunings. It's a process. It's not a one-time event. Okay, there you go. So, important concept. Everything stays in the same location on the tree and grows larger in diameter. So if you have a big codominant branch low, guess what? As the tree becomes mature, you're still going to have a big codominant branch low. It's not going to change. The height of the first permanent branch you want in the landscape depends on the tree's use in the landscape. A low branch camphor would be very appropriate there. It's not appropriate on the streets of Berkeley, right? So the height of the first permanent scaffold depends on what your desire is. You have a plan for that. So temporary branches are really important, and it's one of the things that we waste, both growth, we fertilize, we do all this stuff. The leaf area is pretty good for making the tree grow fast. I would think in this climate, temporary branches along trunks would have value. Homeowners, again, and Linda mentioned this, they think the tree should be like this, right? And the young nursery tree magically turns into the mature round-headed tree. And that's not how it works. But that's what has driven the horrific structure that we have in nursery production and also arboriculture. Remember, we show up 15 years after the tree's been planted. Landscapers got the first 15 feet. Scaffolds are set in that time. We show up and we've got problems. So temporary branches anyway are very important. I like them. These are, I'm going to show you some of my work. I lived in a place, Visalia, gets to 110 in the summer, no shade, no street trees. And so I planted Pistachio chinensis on this street. I planted whips, no branches. If I don't have any branches, I don't have to worry about cutting them off later. I need to get sign clearance because if I don't clear the sign, guess what? Mrs. Jones' flower shop is going to clear the sign. So within 10 years, I was able to train the trees up and get them above the signs and get that canopy down the street to provide shade. So the slide on the right is absolutely horrific. I pulled it off the internet. It's terrible, but it's Valley Visalia Community Bank, and they were the first place to plant street trees in my community around 1990 when I was a senior in high school. Nobody knew anything about this. They just put a tree in. The tree on the left is the replacement tree for the tree that was there. So the tree had been pruned many times since its planting of 1990, but there are clearly some issues. Can anybody see what the issues are? You see them? All of which no good. Sorry. I get chained to this. I just want to walk around and talk to you folks. This is really hard for me to sit here like this, but I get it. So this is a very significant issue here, right? You've got all the load in one place, and that's not a good thing. And a bark inclusion, for those that aren't familiar with the term, it's where the branch bark ridge folds in and there's no connective tissue at the bark top of the union, right? You can see this tree has been pruned. Did any of the pruning look like it did anything to address that issue? No, it's clearance, right? Get the tree out of the way. Well, the tree didn't really get out of the way. Oh. Does it work? Yeah, they fixed it. Is this on? It's on? Oh, cool. Yes. Oh. Well, then I'll walk. Let's see, I got all sorts of stuff. Because they filmed or just see the screen? Shoot. So we've got a bark inclusion here, and the tree failed.
when you buy a tree, you buy time, right? When you buy a tree, I know there's nurseries here. When you're buying a tree, you're buying time. So this is equivalent of a 108. This is a $20,000 tree plus planting. And we cut it down because there was no corrective pruning done on this tree. It was a totally weak structure, all of which was preventable and broken. And I don't pick on Visalia Community Bank. They had the foresight to plant street trees. Nobody knew about structure, and not everybody knows about this today. But you could see where all the trees had been headed at the nursery, and nobody did any corrective pruning. The corrective pruning part is what caused the problem, not the heading. These trees I planted in about 2005, 15 years after the ones next to it. And they're both Pistachio chinensis. And you can see they have very different structure. They have the same form. They're both round. The structure is totally different on these trees. And you can see what's going on there, right? And you can see what's going on here. So you see the lower branch to the right, that's a pretty big aspect ratio. As I was learning to do this, and I learned pruning by pruning, I was hesitant to reduce or take that off, and which I did go back. Now I would have made a reduction cut here or here much earlier in the process. But you can see we were removing branches over the street for clearance and selecting a nice strong central leader on a Pistachio chinensis that I've been told many times cannot grow out with the central leader. Do not grow with the central leader. As you can see, we need some clearance here. We don't clear it, the truck will clear it. So after a while, because I'm not a climber, and so I worked with the local company that had the contract from the city to continue the pruning. And you can see at this time, we went ahead, whoops, what happened? Oh, there we go. You can see at this time, we went ahead and made that reduction cut there to flatten the branch out. So what happens is if a branch has a large aspect ratio and it's growing in a codominant fashion, it shades the leader out and you have no branches up that side. So if you cut it off, you end up with half a tree. Whole idea is to lay that flat early in its process and let another branch come out above it. You want 15 scaffolds on a mature tree along a leader, not 3 in one spot. Okay, so this is one of the standard trees, and we have to clear the sign, right? What kind of pruning are we doing to clear the sign? It's lion's tailing, right? We're lion's tailing the tree to clear that sign. Short of cutting that branch off, there is no other solution. Last time I checked, lion's tailing was not a good thing, right? It's not a good thing. So to show where you apply the dose affects how the tree goes, look at this picture, then look at the next picture on the other side. What do you see? See elongation of the terminals outside the canopy or crown as we remove wood from the inside, which is not what we're wanting to do, right? So look at how that's grown out. Do you see how that branch has grown out past? By lion's tailing it rather than subordinating it, it's growing farther. I have a bark inclusion and I'm pushing the branch out. What does that mean? My opportunity for failure is worse. So you can kind of see the difference of how these trees were trained. If I was going to climb, I would much rather climb the tree on the left, right? It's a ladder, than the tree on the right. Who wants to get out in that top up there with bark inclusion way away from the point of attachment and a pretty bad tie-in point? It's not very much fun. Okay, so that's how that works. Where you apply the dose and the volume of the dose influence how the tree grows. The aspect ratio, when you're looking at a young and adolescent tree, will tell you what that tree is going to be, how it's going to grow. The branch size in relation to the trunk on a young and adolescent tree, if you know what you're looking at, you can see how that tree is going to grow and where you need to apply dose to influence the structure. Okay, so, yep. And this is my lovely wife, Sandra, planting this tree. And you can see there's no permanent, none of the branches that were on the tree were there at this stage. I cut everything off over time. Okay, hopefully we get it right the second time. So bark inclusions are not a good thing. You need to trade them out. Reduction, whenever you have large aspect ratio branches, you have a reduction of caliper above the leader. Anytime anybody stands up here and says always in arboriculture, chances are they're wrong. It's not always. Having said that, I have never seen where I have a large aspect ratio branch, a codom, that above that branch isn't a significant reduction. I don't use the word always in arboriculture ever. So we've done a lot of training, and I learned this from doing and tested, and I have hundreds of trees out there, some of which are now 20 years old that I started when I was a kid. And we do trainings, and then people prune, and then I evaluate, and it doesn't always go well. The whole concept of how to get this, and this is an example how it didn't, they got part of it. They didn't get the whole thing. So this is my central leader, right? When I remove wood from a part of a tree, what does it do? Correct. They made very small reduction cuts on these large aspect ratio branches and kind of lion's tailed it. What does that do? Drive the top out. So what the crews did here is they slowed the leader down and promoted the codominance by that pruning. But they did do a couple reduction cuts in this area. How did it turn out? Exactly what I would have expected at the time. Choked out the leader, and we have codominant branches everywhere. So whips, I like whips. None of your customers are running to the store that's saying, I want the Charlie Brown one. Get me the one with no branches. I have to have that one, right? Nobody wants this tree. And that's what's driven the industry to cut the tops off at the nursery. Nurseries are not bad people. I really enjoy them. They're really good people. They're responding to a market. The bottom line is you can head a tree to branch it and restore the leader and make a beautiful crown that is both a sellable product. We are capitalists here, folks. A sellable product and good structure. It doesn't have to be either or. They're not evil. They don't know. And as an industry, we have to kind of work together. We're very, very siloed as an industry, and we got to work as a team. So this is a Raywood ash, which is not my favorite tree. But is there enough room for the branches, 5 branches in 3 inches to get big here? Remember, everything's just going to stay in this location and get bigger. I don't like it because this happens. And I can fix this in 2 minutes. I could fix this 3 different ways. This ain't so easy to fix, folks. Not so good. So we can manage the load. We can keep things pulled in. We can bolt them. We can cable them. We can do stuff, but can't change the structure at this point. Structural pruning moves from influencing growth and structure to managing load over time as the tree matures. So you can see this one's actually bolted together. Poor structure can lead to failures, and it's less than ideal. And I would argue if you start pruning when a plant is young or a tree is young, you can avoid any and all structural defects, period. Period. So this is the Oregon. This is J. Frank Schmidt. Actually, I took this in the field at one time, and they would head the tree, cut the branch back, keep that in check and have a central leader. California growers were late to that party. They have now kind of joined the party, which is a good thing, because if it starts with a good structure, chances are when you folks show up, at least there's an opportunity for something decent. I'm not picking on the landscape contractors in any way, shape, or form, because this doesn't happen in arboriculture every day. I never see it happen in landscape maintenance. So Bradford pear, do you guys ever had those here? Great tree, right? Love them. It's a great tree for tree services to clean up after storms and wind and all sorts of things. Yeah. So these are Bradford pears, and we actually did bad things to Bradford pears. And this Bradford pear was headed. This was headed with a leader retained, and this is not headed. So for the people at home, let's see what they're seeing. The tree on the left was not headed. The tree in the middle was headed with the leader retained, and the tree on the right was headed and somebody walked away. It was break, lunchtime. They left it alone. What do you notice here about this area? Do you notice that the branch aspect ratio after the heading cut is large? Do you notice that they're all the same size and they go upright? Do you notice when you go down the crown, the aspect ratio is very nice and laid out laterally? So this is no bueno. This heading cut and walking away is a problem. Heading a tree to branch it is not a problem. Not coming back is a problem. So this is actually this tree. After I fixed it, this one was fine. Dick Harris had a Bradford pear in his front yard. He got an early introduction of it. He trained it and it didn't break and it was beautiful. It's a great structure. We destroyed that tree. Not that it's a great tree, but we as an industry destroyed the tree. So I planted a lot of street trees. I planted about 25,000 trees myself, not personally, but have been responsible for that through nonprofit efforts and other things. And when I was doing the downtown one, I get so pissed when somebody would break the tree. I'd do all this work and we didn't have irrigation, so we had to hand water it. And then somebody would break it. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to dig this up. And then I changed my water cycle and blah, blah, blah. So I got sick of that. I decided I'm just cutting these trees in half and I'm going to rework them on the streets. This is now, the street trees are now a nursery. And so what I did was anytime something got broken, I'd just make a heading cut. I'd pull up my best shoot, and then I'd start the retraining process right there on the street. And you can see it's amazing. And what we do is we kept temporary branches on the trunk and just kept them inside the tree well, kept them in check. And the very well-meaning landscape professional made a removal cut to a branch growing down. Why? Because there's a stick up there and it doesn't make sense. And the crown has to magically turn into this round thing. And so the landscape professional was confused that it had a leader. And so he's making it round, right? This is not uncommon, the misconception of how young trees, adolescent trees grow compared to mature trees. Two different animals, folks. So what do you think about this tree? Is this tree ruined? There we go. We've got a glass half full, not half empty. We fixed it, right? Grab bamboo, pull up the new central leader, which was my best branch that I had, and then cut everything back hard in a pyramid to keep the leaf area, but force the growth into the leader. So everything got headed hard, but the leader was left alone. And holy cow, it grew. Kept growing. And you can see my original topping heading cut replace. And there she is. The leader needs to be the biggest. And in the center, it does not have to be straight. Doesn't have to be straight. It could go all over the place. You just want the main connection point, the main structure to be bigger than everything that's attached to it. Okay, so heading a tree and restoring a leader is just fine. Sometimes I get nursery trees that were problematic and I may remove everything, cut them, put a piece of bamboo, retrain them and let them go. And this is the process. And this was our compromise to the industry saying it's fine, head the tree. You just need to follow up and follow up correctly. So there's often choices, not one way. And this is a little tree that I planted by my house here. And you can see there is a 1-to-1 aspect ratio here. Again, it's size relationship, not size. So I'm looking at small trees, big trees, medium-sized trees. I'm studying the structure, which means I'm studying the aspect ratio. So the aspect ratio, these are all good. Whoops, that's not so good. So I can pull this over and it's straighter, but it's smaller. So my choice is this side is smaller, but it's straighter. This side is bigger, but there's more bends. Which one you guys want to do? Smaller, straighter, bigger, more bends. Which one? This is the democratic process, so none of us agree, right? So I heard both. It depends on your perspective, right? It depends on your perspective. So I took bigger, crooked. Smaller, straighter would have worked. So if you are a smaller, straighter person, that was perfectly fine. It worked just fine. The reason I did this is I wanted to show how the tree put wood on so you could see that that little bend or dog leg was totally irrelevant. So as the tree's growing, it's putting wood on this side and this side. And by the time you get here, it's almost gone. And now that the tree is 10-inch caliper, you don't even know it. Okay, so aspect ratio is important. Reading the structure. When you read the structure, this tells you, hey, none of these are going to peat. These is really good. Probably don't even need to prune this tree. What do we see here? Large aspect ratio, choke above the unions. Oh, we see that several times. We need to intervene. This is where, and we can intervene lightly or aggressively, how fast you want to get it done. There's 3 or 4 different ways to fix this. You could select this as your new branch, cut these off. You could cut these 2 off. You could cut these back, cut this down, select this. There is a number of ways to fix this. This is probably a 2-year fix. 2 pruning doses, you could train out that issue. So, and then sometimes like oaks and pistache, you guys plant Pistachio chinensis, right? Yeah, because that would handle this climate. They grow in whorls, right? Well, this one had a whorl. This is actually not a drawing. This is a tree. And so what I did was I reduced the number of branches in one spot, and then I made the dreaded heading cuts back to buds away from the central leader. Don't be afraid of the dreading heading cuts on very small wood. I say that jokingly, but because of topping and decay, making an 8-inch heading cut is so much different than making a 1/2-inch heading cut. They're not on the same planet. Okay, so before and after pruning. All that was done was, and I cut off the big aspect ratio temporary branches, leaving the small ones, clarifying the leader and subordinating the branches around the leader, right? And my wife called me and said, hey, you know that little pistachio that's in your slide set? Someone did a really nice pruning job to it. Did a super good job. And my wife, you know, we walk in through Home Depot parking lot or Costco, and of course I'm looking at the trees and look at the history and look what they did and so on. So she thinks it's funny to tease me. She calls me and says, oh, they did a brilliant job. check it out. You're gonna love the tree by Tommy's. It looks really good. So I drove by there and I said, yeah. And so I went and talked to them. They said the sign, and I said, I'm going to clear the sign. All you're going to do is make it harder for me to clear the sign. We're going backwards, folks. And we had a group hug, and it's like, you just wasted all my time, but it's okay. And so I called my wife and I said, I fixed it, sweet pea. Have a look. What do you think? Looks good, right? It's a fat whip. So this is not a problem. Guess what? There's no heartwood yet. No heartwood yet. No heartwood, no decay. No problem. And even if there was a little pocket of decay in there, it's not an issue. There's so much wood that's going to be around it and maturity. So what'd the tree do? Anybody ever top a tree before? Nobody out here topped a tree. I know that. It exploded, right? So then the restoration process begins. And restore the tree and select a new central leader and shorten the branches that are competing with the central leader and remove some branches over time, cutting to buds away from the central leader because I don't have anything to cut to, right? It's a young pistachio, all I have is buds. There's no tertiaries. And there's Tyson again as the scale. He's always a good sport with this stuff. And you can see tree pretty good, right? Well, a couple of things I learned. I should have been more aggressive on these lower branches. And you can see what I call swoops or my reduction cuts in there that have taken place over time. And I should have been far more aggressive on these branches and hit them harder. They got too big, too low. And there she is, and the tree continues to grow on. Ultimately, I removed this one, and this one's over the road, so I don't love it. Oh, how embarrassing. The speaker's phone is ringing. Nice. Okay. I should have probably taken that off. I should have calmed it down. I would have had something over here, but I didn't. Because it didn't matter anyway. I like to waste time, folks. I like to go out and work on stuff and have it all be for naught. So you can see, and there's the sign that started the battle anyway. Okay, so aspect ratio, in all seriousness, everything that's important today, everything that I feel that is important for you to take away is in this slide. And that aspect ratio is really important. And when you have large aspect ratio, you can see a choke on the main trunk or the leader. That's how you're reading the issue. See, from here to here, you go from 1.5 inch caliper to 3/4 inch caliper within this far. There is no reduction of taper around any of these branches until you have your codom, then a significant reduction of taper, right? This is a Corcus suber. Do you guys plant Corcus subers? Cork oaks? It's a neat tree. So there's two ways to fix it, right? We could subordinate that branch. We can remove that branch. Which one was right? Either. When do you want to come back? I was being kind of lazy on this one, and I just wanted to get it over with. Okay, so before and after. So I've removed 100% of the buds. On this tree, I'm going to remove 1% of the buds. The dose has to meet the objective and the structure. Don't get caught on the 25% rule. Don't get caught on the rules. Look at the tree, the situation, and apply the dose. So the tree grew on, and it's kind of neat. You could see where all this was here. This is actually this little cluster of branches right here is right here. you can see that the tree develops according to the theory of uniform stress, meaning it puts wood on where it needs it. If you look at this, you see a reduction of caliper by half from here to here. It's gone. Tree put the wood on. What was competing and stealing the energy from the trunk and the leader is now gone. Tree compensated. And there she is. So nursery production sort of pruning. You can see this doesn't meet the spec. Couple cuts. This now meets the spec, right? Pretty easy. So branches that are a small aspect ratio and a good orientation, no touch. No touch. Don't have to touch every branch. Then reduction hard of the biggest aspect ratio branches, and then some redirecting of other things. How's the time? I got 10? Okay. Sorry about the poor quality. I took this as an actual slide a long time ago. I'm not old. I took slides. Which tree has good structure, which tree has mediocre structure, which tree has terrible structure. Not terrible, less than desirable structure. You want to climb this, right? Any climber just wants to climb right up. You got two leads here. How much load goes down to that? So the farther you get away, next time you get to the truck and you've got your pole pruner, pick your pole pruner up from the middle, pick your pole pruner up from the end. I know you've all done it, but you'll just the amount of load. And just remember that when you're dealing with branches, because it's the same thing. The farther you are from the union, the more it weighs. So a couple things here. These are Liriodendrums. They have the exact same form. They have a totally different structure. This branch is at 5 feet on the tree. It's on a grassy mound. The fact that this was 5 feet tells me that that branch was likely on the tree when it was planted. Nobody did anything. And you have very different structures with the same form. And they're not all equal as far as stability. So this happens, this turns into this slowly over a long period of time. Over a long period of time. The more wood you take out of a part of a tree, the slower it grows relative to the part of the tree, the other parts. So just another quick version. You can see 1-to-1 aspect ratio codon, reduction. You can see where that is. I'm going to go through this fast. And there's the branch here. And you can see the branch stays in the same place and grows larger in diameter until that branch was removed. Aspect ratio is important. And the reduction of caliper above the union is telling you that, hey, this is going to be a codon. Some more real world experience of pruning. What do we do? What do we do? We cut one side off, we reduce it. What do we do? Either one is correct. On this one, got an action shot, folks. Look at that. And we decided to do that. And there she is. And it grew on and looks great. And then they quit watering. So this one, take it off. Looks great. Really good structure. Quit watering. This one was really cool to see the befores and afters and then the years after, because it was a real mess. You could see all these branches from low. So we made some pretty sizable reduction cuts. And the fun thing about this, folks, and here's the trick, is structural pruning and making the tree look better. Because the people that are hiring you, they just want the tree to look good, or they want it smaller. So doing it and trying to make the tree look good, finding where that branch is reduced to aesthetically, as well as for the structure and long-term structure of the tree, is part of the sport. It's fun. So anyway, I was really proud of this because that tree was a mess. And it sure worked well until they quit watering. If you don't water, it doesn't matter. Tree doesn't grow. So we're getting up into adolescent trees, not quite mature, pine. What do you see there in that photo? You see an issue? We say no to crack. That's a problem, right? I mean, that is a real problem on large growing pine tree. Look at, so the caliper, although this isn't a good shot for that, you have a large codom that's bark inclusion, a reduction of caliper. These all look really good. What do? We're going to prune it. It's the only thing we can do. We can cable it, we can prune it, and cable it. If we cable it and don't prune it, we're supporting it, we're going to make it grow longer. So, and our climber is up here, and he's kind of hard to see. He's in this up there, but that's after the reduction cut. So I did not remove that. That branch is going to stay there forever. The instructions to the tree crew that comes back here is keep that bark inclusion. You're going to reduce it. Anything that grows back out and into a flat lateral, and you're going to keep that branch in check in that location forever and grow the tree around it. And it works really well because we did not cut it off and disfigure the tree. If there is not load, there is not danger. The aspect ratio will improve over time. Small aspect ratio, even with bark inclusions, are stronger than large aspect ratio, period. So before and after, and that's a better picture of our guy. So this was new to the climbers. They said, we're going to do the pines. And then I'm like, no, I just need one of you right there. And we're then on to the next, because did that tree need to be pruned? No, it didn't. Didn't need to be pruned. Just make a bunch of green waste. It's fine. So, and you can have multis and that sort of thing. We do some of this. We have multis. This is Angel. I work a lot with Angel. He's a really good climber and fun to work with. He's really picked up this in pruning. I started working with him about 6 years ago, and he loves his job and he loves pruning, and it's changed the discipline for him. So, you go to work, you're doing the same thing. And he worked for a company and they just chop and chip basically. And now he's taking on this and he's pruning and he's changing the architecture of trees over time. He is excited to be at work. He loves it. And so it makes him more interesting. So this is Robert Phillips. He's a longtime friend and did a lot of masters climbing. And this was a Shumardii in Santa Rosa at one of the workshops. And I had Robert tie areas to where I wanted to make the reduction cut so people can see. The hook's coming out very soon. And I'm going to just click through, and the tree turned out really nice. The goal is to do this and do it aesthetically pleasing. Pistache with bark inclusion. Can you see the potential to fail? So we had to remove one because we had 3 in this area, and then subordinate the other one and look at the difference of aspect ratio over time. Another one that got all messed up, and we lost the leader, and the leader went cattywampus, and that's Tyson, still at a young point, and hit the tree hard, and of course it responded and kept going. And the original leader, folks, and I'll go to both sides, the original leader on this goes out here, or maybe it's here. Here's the original leader. I trained up a new one. So the original lead, backwards. Yeah, original lead was something like that. Okay. And it's turned out to really structurally sound, very nice tree. Want to avoid large codoms with bark inclusions. They can make a mess. Sometimes nature does it on its own. Oaks fail a lot. This tree had no failure in it. This is a Quercus lobata. It has good aspect ratio. And nature did this, not any people. So when Shigo really pushed the non-topping, we went to thinning, and I'm going to show you kind of what that is. And the tree was pruned at 6/24/06. This is Jeff. Jeff's a good guy. Jeff's thinning the tree. It's looking beautiful and lacy. This is 6/26 when he did the work. Here's 8/29. Guess what? Trees respond to pruning, right? 8/29, 2 months. 9/29, 3 months. 4 months. 1 year. 1 year response from tree, thinned, 6 months, 1 year. So what did they achieve? Look good for about 6 months, and good is relative to your perception. If you wanted to uplight it and you're on a state, it'd look pretty. 2 years later. Does that mean you go and train a leader into this crepe myrtle that's 90 years old? No, you do not do that. So you prune for structure, young and adolescents. Well, the tree is growing and changing. Once the tree is mature, then you manage load. Structural pruning is applying different doses to different parts of the tree to influence the structure and growth. Standard pruning is removing 25% the same off each and every branch. We cut a lot of big back to small, meaning big parts of the trees back to small. Traditional is a lot of cutting small back to the big. That is, so this ultimately gets bigger and this can subordinate. Here's the code. Now, I encourage you to be skeptical of everything I've told you until you know it to be true for yourself. I do not have a PhD. I have a BA in geography with an emphasis in regional planning. You learn this stuff by seeing in the field and working on it. It's really a fun thing, but be skeptical. Questions, comments, criticisms. I'm out of time because I don't want to cause another speaker an issue. I'm out of time, right? I have one on roots that's shorter this afternoon. Please hold your questions. And I thank you for your time.